This is Wayne from My Tech News, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about game genres. Genres I like and genres I dislike, because I'm just like any of your typical gamers. There's genres I like and there's genres I dislike. Keep in mind, this is not set in stone, and it may change in the near future. It always depends on how you feel at a certain time, and it could easily change depending on what kind of games come out and how you're feeling and things like that. So just keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to be going over genres I like and genres I dislike, kind of, so you can kind of get an idea of what I like and don't like. Now, if you've seen a lot of my Switch reviews, then you'll know what type of games I'm primarily into, so that kind of gives you an idea of what I like and don't like. First off, I'm going to be talking about genres that I don't like, so you can get an idea of genres that I normally don't like. Maybe I'll buy games in that genre once in a while, but typically I don't really buy too many games in those genres. And sorry if I offend some fans of those genres, it's just that they're not really my type of games, not really my go-to and things like that. So just keep that in mind. And I will explain like why I don't like them or why I normally don't go into those genres. Let's start off with one of the biggest genres out there. One of the biggest genres out there has to be RPGs. And if you notice, I really don't play a lot of RPGs. I do like RPGs and I do like storytelling. I do like combat, whether it be turn-based combat, whether it be grid-based combat, action RPG. I like RPGs as a whole. It doesn't really matter what type of RPG it is, but in general, I do like RPGs. The only reason I typically don't play RPGs is the fact that RPGs, for me, really don't have a lot of replayability. The initial playability of RPGs is very high. If you're playing an RPG, there's a lot to do in an RPG, and a lot of RPGs out there gives you like hundreds and hundreds of hours, depending on what RPG you play, or even 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 hours of gameplay. So there is a lot of gameplay when it comes to these RPGs, but after you beat the RPGs, that's where the replayability kind of stops. After you play a long RPG, are you really willing to go back to an RPG right away? They are nice. They are a nice experience to play an RPG, and then you can replay them in the near future after the newness wears off. So maybe like a year to like 5 years down the road, you can pick up an RPG that you have set down for a while and revisit it, and your experience may be a little bit different, just because there's different ways to play a lot of RPGs. So it's never certain that you're going to be playing the same RPG the same way you would have played it when you first beaten the RPG. But for me, it's just really hard for me to go back, and that's something you're going to notice as a theme of this video. Right now, I'm in a mindset where I don't really buy a lot of genres if it doesn't really have a lot of replayability. I just want my money to go as far as it can go. That's why I don't play a lot of these other genres. One genre I really don't buy a lot of games for is sports. I used to be a big sports fan, and I would buy a couple of different sports. The two biggest sports I was into when it comes to video games is Madden, NFL, so football, and then I used to buy NBA 2K. So I did love the 2K series, and I did love the Madden series. But as of late, I'm not really feeling those games, and I just pretty much stayed away from those games. And one factor that really does suck if you're a sports fan, those games go out of date so fast that when you want to play online, you have to pretty much keep buying them yearly, because if you don't buy them like almost all the time, then you'll be out of touch with the community. The rosters will be out of date, things like that. So that does kind of suck, and that's one thing that really doesn't make me want to go out and buy a sports game, unfortunately. Maybe if they would release a sports game every like 5 years or every like 3 to 4 years, and maybe I would be more inclined to buy these sports games, but I'm just not really inclined to really play sports games, just because, well, like I just said, they come out so frequently, and I want to play online mostly. I don't want to be stuck playing the CPUs or playing the bots in the game, because it's just not the same as playing an online opponent, and I don't want to keep rebuying them yearly. And I remember in the past how many Maddens I bought and how many 2Ks I bought, and I bought a lot of sports games in the past, so that's pretty much why I don't really buy too many sports games. I'll buy sports games on occasion, and depending on if it's an arcade sports game, then I might be more inclined to pick it up than a real simulator game. I'm really into both when it comes to sports games. I do like simulation like Madden and 2K, and I also like more arcadey stuff like the Mario sports games and just any other game that feels much more arcadey. I'm trying to think of some, also moving on, I'm trying to think of some other genres that I'm really not frankly quite into. I don't really have a list off the top of my head of different genres I'm really not hardcore into. I guess going back to the topic of RPGs, I'm not really too big of a fan of RPGs that are JRPGs. When I normally played RPGs, and when I do end up picking RPGs up in the future and things like that, I'm not really hardcore into the JRPGs, Japanese role-playing games, let's just say. I'm like stuttering all over the place here. But they weren't really my cup of tea. I'm not really a fan of anime in the first place, so maybe that's why those games really don't appeal to me. So mostly when I played RPGs and when I really wanted to buy them, I was playing mostly like the Western type of RPGs. I didn't really play your typical JRPGs. One RPG series I do like, which is JRPG. I absolutely love the Persona series. If you haven't played the Persona series by Atlus, the Persona series is flat out one of the best JRPGs you can possibly get. Of course, that is debatable depending on who you ask, but a lot of people will say that those are some of the best games hands down when it comes to RPGs or JRPGs. They're just flat out amazing games, and I can agree with them. I have played Persona 4 and I have played Persona 5. I think the reason I really got into Persona was the fact that when I actually heard about Persona, I was playing my PlayStation Vita, and one of the best games on the PlayStation Vita was the Persona 5 Golden game, and a lot of people said that's pretty much the reason why you pick up a PS Vita. And since I've already had a Vita, I was like, I might as well pick up Persona 4. So I ended up picking up Persona 4 Golden, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, and I fell in love with the game. And I thought I wouldn't be in love with JRPGs in anime and things like that, but that game is flat out amazing. And then transitioning on to Persona 5, let's just say that is tops Persona 4 altogether. I don't want to make this video talking strictly about Persona, because that's what it kind of seems like right now, but some of the best games. So I do play some JRPGs from time to time. I'm just not really hardcore into JRPGs, and I've touched on some other ones like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, but in general I don't play JRPGs. I'm trying to think of some other genres. One genre is kind of hit or miss for me, I will have to be totally 100% honest with you guys, is shooting games. When it comes to third person or first person shooters, it really depends, but in general I don't go crazy over those type of games. I will play them from time to time. I won't always buy the latest and greatest Call of Duty or the latest and greatest Battlefield or whatever you call them when they come out to the market. It's really a hit or miss, because those kind of games, for some reason, for me, I just really don't feel them all the time. So that's why you don't see me going out buying them every single year like some die-hard shooter fan. So I wouldn't say a no-go on the shooters, but I wouldn't say I'm a big die-hard when it comes to third-person or first-person shooters. I don't go crazy for them. I think the reason I don't really go crazy for the genre of shooters is because, well, I think they kind of repetitive, and after you've bought one, it's like, do I really need the latest and greatest? You play one of the older Call of Duties, and then you play one of the newer Call of Duties, and it's like, how much has really changed, and do I really need to go out and play this? Because, let's face it, when you go back to an older Call of Duty, most of the time the lobbies are still open. Granted, they are kind of hacked depending on how old you go back, but those lobbies are still up, and you can still have a lot of fun playing some of the older shooters. So for me, I don't really have a reason to upgrade, and I don't really feel like spending $60 every year just to buy the latest and greatest shooter. So shooters genre is a hit or miss on me. One genre, thinking of other genres, I know there's a lot of gaming genres, so I do apologize as well. I know this video is kind of like, I'm kind of like going all over the place with this video, but just bear with me right here because I'm not really scripting this video. This video is unscripted. I don't have a script, so I'm just going off the top of my head. I want to make that as clear as possible to you guys so you know what's going through my head. When it comes to other genres like racing, I do like racing games, but mostly I don't go out of my way to buy a lot of racing games. My favorite racing game to date still has to be the Mario Kart series. Okay, I'm back on the camera. Sorry about that, but I had to take an unnecessary cut there. But pretty much what I was saying that my favorite racing game to date probably still has to be the Mario Kart series. I absolutely love, love, love Mario Kart. Mario Kart is just a very good pick up and play racing game, and it just really fits my style. And since I really love Nintendo overall, it just really fits my play style. Not to say that I don't love the realistic simulator racing games. I absolutely love those games. I remember when I was a die-hard Gran Turismo fan, that was actually my very first time playing a video game, racing game, was the Gran Turismo series. I know I did play another series back on the PS1. I think it's called Motocross, something Motocross, and that game was fun as well. I do love realistic, and I do love arcadey ones, and I also love kart racings. Pretty much I love the genre as a whole, but I don't really go out of my way to pick up anything else besides Mario Kart. Usually when I have Mario Kart, that pretty much satisfies me, so that's why I pretty much play Mario Kart specifically, and I'm pretty much okay with that. And in terms of other genres that I really don't like, I can't really think of any off the top of my head. I know there's quite a few other genres out there, but there's so many different genres and so many different categories. I can be sitting here for a while, and sometimes I can't think of them off the top of my head. When it comes to just thinking about other genres, since I just thought of another genre, thinking about rhythm games, I absolutely do love rhythm games, but it's just that nowadays rhythm games are not really a dime a dozen. It's like when a rhythm game comes out, it's kind of under the radar, or sometimes you really don't see the rhythm game, so there's not too much coming out when it comes to rhythm games. I could be eating my words here, and someone could tell me that there's a lot of rhythm games or enough rhythm games coming out that I just haven't checked, because I really don't pay attention to the rhythm game genre. I used to be a really big fan of the Guitar Hero series, and then after the Guitar Hero series I moved on to the Rock Band series, and then I also played the DJ Hero series, and I also played that one Japanese game which is kind of like a drum game. There's actually one on Nintendo Switch right now. It's not in the US or I think UK eShop right now, but it is in the Japanese eShop, and you can, of course, since it is region free, the Switch, you can import that and you can play that on your American Switch or your UK Switch. But I love that game. Something drum thing. It's a very Japanese game. You guys may know exactly what I'm talking about. I dabbled my feet in that game as well, like that game as well. There's also a game on the PSP called, I think, Guitar Man Lives, and Guitar Man Lives is just a fantastic game. It's actually a port or a remake of a PS2 game. The only problem with Guitar Man Lives is the fact that Guitar Man Lives is a very expensive game, so if you want to actually ever end up actually playing Guitar Man Lives, be ready to fork out some money for Guitar Man Lives. And pretty much, yeah, I do like rhythm games. Rhythm games do fit the bill. It's just that not so many come out, and they're really under the radar, so I don't really play a lot of rhythm games, unfortunately, so that genre is kind of dead to me, if you understand exactly what I'm talking about here. I'm trying to think of some other genres that I'm not really too fond of, or I don't really play too much of, just trying to think of different genres here in video games. Let's see here what other genres I really don't play too much. Just thinking of genres. Well, yeah, I really can't think of anything off the top of my head. I probably should have done some research of different video game genres before I came on screen here, or came on camera and really talked about this, but I got some of the big ones out the way and some of the more obvious ones. Now let's talk about some of the genres I absolutely love, and I pretty much buy anything in that genre when it comes to video games. Let's start off with, I guess, open world games. Open world games can actually be tied to RPGs, because a lot of open world games have a lot of RPG elements. If you look at Skyrim, if you look at The Witcher 3, if you look at Breath of the Wild, if you look at Borderlands 2 or the Borderlands series, you'll know a lot of those open world games are pretty much open world RPGs. So I absolutely love open world RPGs. Open world RPGs pretty much give you the best amount of value for your money. So if you want something that's going to make your money go very, very, very far, then you should definitely look into the open world RPG. And the cool thing is, or if you didn't know, I actually ended up playing Borderlands 2 about 7 or 8 times. I'm a big, massive Borderlands fan. I absolutely loved Borderlands 2, and I played that thing to death. I have over 1,000 hours, and that's between multiple consoles and multiple platforms, as crazy as that sounds. I love that game so much. I owned it on the 360. I've also owned it on the PS3, the PC, and even the watered down PS Vita port. I love, 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 love Borderlands 2. So you can see I'm definitely a big fan of these open world RPGs. It just happens to be that I just loved everything about Borderlands 2. I love the fact that Borderlands 2 had a really good art style to the game. I also love the fact that it was a first-person shooter open world game, because there's not too many I can think of off the top of my head that are open world RPGs with first-person shooting. Another one I can think of off the top of my head is the Fallout series, but that's something I've never really given a chance to. Maybe I should go back and really try to give that game another chance. Don't get me wrong, I have played that game. I played Fallout 3 for about 2 or 3 hours, and for some reason I really wasn't feeling the Fallout series. Don't hate me for this, guys, but for some reason it's just not my cup of tea. But then again, I didn't play it long enough. Maybe I should go back to it. Maybe I would fall in love with the Fallout series, and maybe you'll get me interested in Fallout 76, I think it's called right there. But yeah, just going back to the open world RPGs, open world games in general are my cup of tea. I just love how much you can get out of them. I just love the fact that you can pretty much go anywhere. The RPG elements, I know Breath of the Wild doesn't really have a lot of RPG elements compared to some other open world RPGs, but I just love open world games in general. Even Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is one of those other open world games that you can get a lot of value for your money, and I love open world RPGs. Another genre I absolutely love, and I can't deny my love for it, is platformers. I love, love, love platformers. The reason I love platformers may be due to the fact that I grew up with the platforming genre. My very first video game I ever touched in my life, I've said it many, 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 many times on my YouTube channel, I absolutely played Crash Bandicoot when it came out on the PS1. The PS1 was my first venture into video games, and Crash Bandicoot was it on the PS1, and I played that a very long time. And then I also played other games on the PS1, like Toomba. If anyone played Toomba, it's pretty much a platforming game. And then I also played Rayman, Spyro. So I've pretty much played a lot of platformers, and I just love platformers. This may sound crazy to some of you out there, but I think platformers actually have some good replayability. For some reason, I just find myself going back to these platforming games. One platformer I've played over 100 times in my lifetime to date, or maybe even over 1,000 times, is one of the Kirby games. I know a lot of people give slack to the Kirby games, and a lot of people say, oh, look how easy the Kirby series is, but Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland on the Game Boy Advance, I love, 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 love. And the fact that I've already 100% of that game over like 50 or 80 times right now is just insane. And for some reason, I just love replaying the Kirby games. I just find them really cute, really easy, really simple, really not too complex. So I keep going back to the Kirby series. But overall, I just love platforms, whether it be a Mario game, whether it be Crash, Spyro, Rayman, just pretty much any platformer in existence. I do love platformers in general, so platformers are a very big thing with me. I actually can't wait until Nintendo actually moves over Super Mario Maker over to the Nintendo Switch. Will Nintendo ever move Super Mario Maker over to the Switch? That's to be seen, and we don't even know if it's going to be a port of the first one, or is it actually going to be a Super Mario Maker 2, or will they go with something like the Legend of Zelda Maker or something else like that? Now let's talk about some other genres. Just thinking about genres, trying to think of different genres. In general, I do love multiplayer games. It depends on what the multiplayer games are, but I am a big fan of multiplayer stuff, because I think multiplayer stuff also gives you a lot for your money as well, depending on what it is. And like I said before, I don't pick up every shooter when they come out. I don't buy them on a regular basis. But one of the multiplayer shooters I've been playing a lot lately, I have to admit, has been Paladins on the Nintendo Switch. I actually got that right when it came out on the Nintendo Switch, so I paid the initial $30. I know I haven't done a review on my channel for Paladins, but I just didn't have the time, and it just really slipped me, so I didn't really do the review on the Paladins game. But I love Paladins. If you don't know anything about Paladins, Paladins is a game that's pretty much a clone of Overwatch, but I wouldn't really necessarily say it's the exact same thing as Overwatch. One thing Paladins has that Overwatch doesn't have is the fact that you can actually customize your build with a hero. So let's say two people on separate teams are playing the same hero. They're not going to be playing them the exact same way because you can customize your loadout when it comes to hero, whereas Overwatch, you're pretty much stuck with the same build as someone else. So if you're playing one hero and they're playing another hero on the other team, it's pretty much going to be the same way that they're playing. You can't really play to your own play style. So that's one thing it has. And the fact, of course, Paladins is a free-to-play game on almost every console right now. So if you have a Nintendo Switch, PC, Xbox One, or the PS4, then you can play Paladins, and I suggest you go ahead and play Paladins. But as you can see, I do love the online multiplayer shooters. Another one I've been really loving, of course, on the Nintendo Switch is still Splatoon 2. Every once in a while, I'll still go back to Splatoon 2 and I'll splat it up. I just think it's a very relaxing game. It's a very easy game, especially if you're not really good into shooters. I think Splatoon 2 is a perfect game to get into because they have a mode called Turf Wars, and Turf Wars pretty much just lets you shoot around your ink gun, and then you just pretty much see who can ink the most area in a small arena. So I think that's a very good starting shooter game if you want to get your feet wet into the whole multiplayer shooter thing. But in general, I do love multiplayer games. Some other genres is thinking about other genres I'm not really a big fan of. Just trying to get all my thoughts and opinions out there on this one video. I don't really play too many RTS games, real-time strategy games. I used to play some real-time strategy games back on the PC. I used to play what's that game called? I used to play Age of Empires. Yep, Age of Empires used to be the joint back in the 90s. If you remember anything about the 90s, that's, I think, when Age of Empires came out, and I used to be play Age of Empires. It was made by Microsoft, and that's a very good RTS game. One game I also fell in love in when it first came out on the 360, I fell in love with a game called Halo Wars. I know it's not that popular when it comes to Halo, or in general, a lot of people probably dismiss Halo Wars, and since it is on a console, I don't blame people for not really picking up Halo Wars, because I understand that Halo Wars is on console, and I know console is not the best representation when it comes to these RTS real-time strategy games, because you don't have a keyboard and mouse, and it's really hard to control your units and really go around an open environment with RTS. You really need a keyboard and mouse to really take full advantage of RTS. Another one I actually played on the PC as well was, I think, StarCraft. Yes, StarCraft. I remember I was introduced to StarCraft with my cousin, and my cousin showed me StarCraft, and that was pretty much all he played on his PC. It's like, what is this StarCraft game? This pretty much reminds me of the same style as Age of Empires, so I was like, I'm going to give this game a try. I gave it a try, and that game turned out to be phenomenal. Never played StarCraft 2, but I have played RTSs. I do like them, but I don't really play them too much, and I don't know how many RTSs are still coming out in this day and age, but I do like some RTS games. But now let's go ahead and talk about one of my favorite genres as of right now. This has to be my #1 most played, and I don't know if it's the most bought genre of video games for me. I know there's not a lot in this category, and I know mostly indie developers are making this genre and keeping this genre alive. You don't see any first-party companies or even any third-party companies really making any games in this genre, but the games genre I'm talking about is roguelike games. Now, if you're unfamiliar with roguelike games are pretty much pick up and play experiences that are randomly generated, and they're always vary in different play styles. They won't always be the same play style. So when it comes to those games, you'll get some that are kind of similar, but in general, if you look at a whole bunch of different roguelikes, you'll get a different experience. It's not like playing a couple of first-person shooters where the first-person shooters after you played Call of Duty, Battlefield, Halo, they kind of all start to seem kind of the same. But with roguelikes, there's so many different games. For instance, Enter the Gungeon is one roguelike I love, and I fell in love with that game. And if you look on my Nintendo Switch play log right now, you'll see I have 335 hours in Gungeon, and it's probably going to go up even higher because I still love that game, and they released an update for Enter the Gungeon, and Enter the Gungeon is a game I absolutely adore and absolutely love. And fun fact, I'm actually really good at the game. Of course, one downside to all roguelikes is the fact that roguelikes is a genre that's very, very, very massively hard. It's a rage inducing. So if you're a person that really doesn't like very hard games, then I would definitely stay away from the roguelike games. But one reason I love the roguelike genre is because they're randomly generated, and most roguelikes, or pretty much all roguelikes, can be completed anywhere between like 40, 50 minutes all the way up to like an hour and change. So they're not very long experiences, but they have a lot of replayability. And as of right now, I'm really loving genres that have a very good amount of replayability. And as you know, the Nintendo Switch is a console that's a hybrid console. And one of the concepts of the Nintendo Switch is to take your Nintendo Switch with you and to have roguelike experiences like Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon, Necromancer, Dead Cells. There's just so many different possibilities when it comes to roguelikes. There's not a lot on the market. I will have to be fair. You will have to search, but there is a couple of different good roguelikes. And roguelikes also have another thing that's really good about them, is the fact that they have a lot of things to unlock. So even though that you're playing these games over and over and over and over when it comes to roguelikes, you're actually unlocking stuff each time you play the game, and that's one thing I find really appealing about the game, on top of the games having a lot of replayability, and they're meant to be played over and over and over and over. I just love the fact that you unlock a lot of things, and it usually takes you a very long time to get good at these roguelike games, to unlock everything, and they're just so fun to play. They're really good pick up and play games. Overall, that's where my mindset is right now. I love it. On another topic before I head out, I just remembered another genre I forgot to mention that I'm not too hardcore into. I'm not really into those fighting 2D fighters or 3D fighters. I really don't play a lot of them. Now, I will have to admit, I love Super Smash Brothers, but it really doesn't work like your traditional fighter. I think that's the reason I love it. Not because it's a Nintendo fighter. You would think I would love it because it's a Nintendo fighter, and I'm a big Nintendo fan. But if Nintendo were to make a 2D fighter like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, then I'm pretty sure I wouldn't like Super Smash Brothers. But I just love the fact that it's very easy to learn, but it's very hard to master. So if you want to get pro at Super Smash Brothers, it'll take you years and years and years. But if you want to get into it, I think it's a very user-friendly, a very beginner-friendly fighting game if you want to get into fighting games. I just don't like the fact that with traditional fighters, like your traditional Street Fighter, your Mortal Kombat, your Marvel vs. Capcoms, I just don't like the fact that when you're playing those games, you have to know a lot of different button combinations. And there's one thing about me you may not know. When I usually play my fighting games, I love to play competitively. So if I was to play like a Street Fighter right now, I would instantly jump online after a while, because for some reason that's just part of me and part of my nature. I just love to play these fighting games competitively. So eventually I'd play a Street Fighter or a Mortal Kombat online, and it probably wouldn't be the best experience. I can't remember these combo buttons and things like that. Whereas Smash Brothers, if you've ever played Smash Brothers competitively, every character pretty much has the same thing, and you can learn it easily. For instance, if you're playing Mario, he can do like a down smash to an up air, and then if I go to another character and they say, what is this down air to neutral, then I immediately know, oh, neutral is when you press the A button, or down smash is when you press the D-pad down or the C-stick down, or this character knows a back throw. Then I know pretty much if someone says this character is best at back throws, then I know back throwing with every character is going to be the same button combination. It's not a different button combination, and you really don't have to learn different button combinations. So it's pretty much easy for me to learn, I would have to say. But in general, I really don't play a lot of fighting games. They're just really not my style. Also, just thinking of another one I'm not really into is shoot-em-ups. I don't really play the shoot-em-up genre all that much. Or is there actually a lot of shoot-em-up games coming out? If you're unfamiliar with shoot-em-ups are like Galaga or Asteroids, I would like to say, games like that. Or maybe Ikaruga, I think's one. But in general, I don't really play a lot of shoot-em-ups. I do like shoot-em-ups, but for some reason, they're either too hard or maybe they're just not coming out enough, so I'm really not into shoot-em-ups. Just thinking of that genre. I think that genre is pretty much non-existing, or if it does exist in 2018, I don't think there is many shoot-em-ups coming out on the market, so it's kind of hard to get your shoot-em-up fix. I think if you want to get your shoot-em-up fix, You have to look at some of the older consoles. That's where a lot of shoot 'em ups are available. But for some reason, shoot 'em ups don't really fill me up. I will admit, I kind of did buy one on Switch. I bought a Graceful Explosion Machine, and I will have to admit, with Graceful Explosion Machine, that game was just very repetitive and very boring. So I pretty much gave up on Graceful. And honestly, I really wouldn't recommend Graceful Explosion Machine just because, for the reasons I mentioned, it's a very repetitive game. There's not a lot going on with that game, and it just sucks. They could have really done more with Graceful Explosion Machine. And now, due to the fact that there's a lot of other games you can buy for pretty cheap, I wouldn't really recommend Graceful Explosion Machine. Well, those are pretty much just some of my genres I dislike, or some of the genres I don't like that much, and genres I love, so you can get a kind of idea of what type of games I play. Like I said, this is not set in stone. Just keep that in mind. Of course, years down the road, or even months down the road, I could change my opinion, and it always depends on the actual game coming out, not necessarily the genre. So maybe tomorrow a new JRPG will come out, and I'll fall in love with the JRPG, and I'll buy it, and I'll be talking about the JRPG. Or maybe tomorrow a cool racing game, a realistic racing game could come out like Gran Turismo, and I could be all over that game, and I could be buying that game. So nothing is set in stone. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.